Hi everyone, in this video we will be going over A-Level Accounting 2022 May-June Paper 3-2 question number 1. This is the structured paper 3 which consists of 6 questions and all of them are of 25 marks. We're also given a time limit of 3 hours, which means that ideally we should be spending about 30 minutes in order to solve each question, and in this video as well we will be attempting to solve this question number 1 in under 30 minutes. So without any further delay, let's get started. MN Drama Club was formed in 2017 with the objective of promoting modern performances, and the treasurer of the club resigned on 31st December 2021. The chairman prepared a draft income and expenditure account which was based on the receipts and payments account. So we're given the draft income and expenditure account for the year ended 31st December 2021 right here. Then the draft income and expenditure account had been presented to a member of the club who is an accountant. Then the further information was available. So let's have a look at our further informations. First of all, there is a great demand for after-school tutorial classes in the local community. In October 2021, the club started running after-school tutorial classes. The club targeted the classes at children from poor families. A maximum of 20 children could join these classes, and children were required to join as student members of the club and pay the following fees in advance. Alright. So the fees we have are student membership fee of 100, which is 1/3 of an ordinary member subscription. So let's figure out the ordinary member subscription. So 1/3 of ordinary member subscription is our student member subscription, which is given to be 100, right? So that's 1/3 times ordinary subscription fee equals to 100, which means that the ordinary member subscription is going to be 3 times 100, which is 300. Alright, then a tuition fee of 400 covering the period from 1st October 2021 to 31st May 2022. Okay, remember that we are given the ending date of 31st December 2021, right? So let's figure out the total months for which this tuition fee of 400 is applicable. So we have October, November, December, January, February, March, April, and May. So this gives us the total of 8 months. But remember that our year ends at December, which means that we only require the tuition fee for these 3 months of October, November, and December. So first of all, let's figure out the monthly tuition fee. We will utilize our unitary method. So for 8 months, we have a fee of 400, which just means that for 1 month, that will just be the fee of 400 divided by 8, which results in 50. Okay, then student membership fees paid by children are included in subscriptions in the draft income and expenditure account. So this is already included, and the tuition fee is refundable on a monthly basis if the student withdraws. The student membership fee is non-refundable. Alright, the tutors are volunteers and have experience in teaching. And the classes were popular and were fully booked, which just means that we were given the maximum number of children to be 20, and all of the 20 children have joined this after-school tutorial classes. So let's figure out the total tuition fee for the months of October, November, and December. So for October, November, and December, the tuition fees is going to be 50 for one student, and we know that the classes were popular and fully booked, which means that we had the total of 20 children. So we need to multiply it by 20, which would give us the monthly tuition fee from 20 students, and we require it for the 3 months. So again, we multiply it by 3, which results in an amount of 3,000. Alright, then we know that these tuition fees were paid in advance, which means that we have already received the tuition fees for the month of January, February, March, April, and May. So for these 5 months, this amount will act as a prepayment while preparing our financial statements for the year ended 31st December 2021. So let's figure it out for those months as well. For January, February, March, April, and May, the tuition fees, again, we'll start with our monthly fee of 50. Then we multiply it our total number of students, and then multiply it with the total number of months, which in this case is 5. So this results in the amount of 5,000. Alright, now for the second information, it relates to ordinary member subscription at 31st December 2021 and 31st December 2020. We are only given the number of members who paid in advance and number of members in arrears, but we have already figured out the ordinary member subscription fees above. Right here, which was 300. We figured it out from the statement that a student membership fee of 1,000 is 1/3 of an ordinary member subscription fee. Now let's figure out the total subscription fees in advance and arrears. So for 0, that is just going to be 0 times 300, which again results in 0. For 9 members, that will be 9 times 300, which results in the amount of 2,700. Then for 24, that will be 300 times 24, which results in the fees of 7,200. And for 4, that will be 4 times 300, which results in 1,200. Okay, and now we need to adjust these amounts to our total subscriptions mentioned in the draft income and expenditure account. So I'm just going to write down the formula that could be easier. So this is the closing balance and the opening balance. We're talking about prepayments and arrears. So remember that the closing balance prepayments represent the prepayment made for the next year, which should not be included in this year's income statement. So this amount should now be excluded. So that's a negative. So if we figure out one of the signs for this, we can easily figure out the next one, because if our closing balance of prepayment is to be subtracted, then the opening balance must be added, and prepayments and arrears have exact opposite adjustments, which just means that if we're subtracting the closing balance for prepayments, we should be adding the closing balance for arrears, and if we're adding the opening balance for prepayments, we should be subtracting our opening balance of arrears. So let's adjust the total subscriptions. We start with the amount given in our draft income and expenditure account, which is given to be 40,400. Now we need to subtract the closing balance of our prepayments, and this is a closing balance since this is for the year 2021 and this is the opening balance because it's for the year 2020. So we have 0 as the closing balance, so we subtract 0. Then we need to add the opening balance of prepayments, which we just calculated to be 2,700. So let's add this amount of 2,700. Then we move to our arrears. We can see that the closing balance is 7,200, and according to our formula, we should be adding this amount. So that will be plus 7,200. And then we have the opening balance of our arrears, which is 1,200. Again, from our formula, we should be subtracting this amount. So that will be minus 1,200. Now this gives the actual amount of subscriptions to be included in our income and expenditure account to be 49,100. All right. Then we are given information relating to the non-current assets. We are given the cost at 31st December 2020 for building as well as equipment. We are given the accumulated depreciation method, as well as the annual rate. And we are also told that a full year's depreciation is charged in the year of purchase of the asset, and an item of office equipment was purchased on credit during the year. The debt was repayable in 3 equal installments at intervals of 4 months, with the first payment made in October 2021. Okay, I think this payment is given in our receipts and payments account, from which we were presented the above draft income and expenditure account. So let's have a look above. Okay, we are given the office equipment's first payment to be 2,000, and we know that this was purchased on credit, which would be settled by 3 equal installments. So if one installment is 2,000, then the total amount for this new office equipment is just going to be 3 times 2,000, which results in 6,000. So this is the cost of new office equipment that was purchased, and we have already been told that a full year's depreciation is to be charged in the year of purchase of the asset. So let's figure out our equipment's depreciation charge for this year. We're given the cost, we have our accumulated depreciation, and the depreciation method is the reducing balance, which means that we need to apply this rate of 20% to the net book value of our office equipment. So let's figure it out. This is the depreciation for office equipment. We start with the given cost of 120,000. Then we add any sort of new additions in this year, which we just figured out to be of 6,000. So that's plus 6,000. And if there are any sort of disposals, we should be subtracting its cost as well. But in this particular case, we are not given any information regarding disposal of office equipment, so we can just completely skip that. The next step would be to subtract the accumulated depreciation in order to figure out the net book value. And the accumulated depreciation is given to be 85,000. Now this gives our total net book value, which we then multiply with our rate of depreciation, which is given to be 20%. So we can just write it down as 0.20. Now this gives the depreciation charge for our office equipment to be 8,200. Now again, let's have a look at our draft income and expenditure account to see if there were mention of disposals or new purchases for building. Let's have a look above. Okay, right here we're given building extension, which just means that we extend our building by purchasing or rebuilding some more buildings, right? Now this is a capital expenditure which should not be included in our income and expenditure account. This is actually the cost of the new additions of building extensions. So let's figure out our depreciation charge for building as well. We can see that our depreciation method for building is straight line, which just means that we need to apply this rate of 10% to the cost of the building. So depreciation for building, let's just figure out the total cost. We have the previous cost of 200,000. And then we need to add the new extension or new addition, which was given to be 16,000. This gives the total cost. Now we can just multiply it with our rate of depreciation of 10%, which you can write down as 0.10, which gives the depreciation charge per year for building to have the amount of 21,600. Okay, then for the fourth information, during the year, a member donated 7,500, which is to be used to sponsor the club's participation in a national event for the coming 5 years. So this amount is to be utilized for the next 5 years, which means that we should not include this entire amount as the income in our income and expenditure account. Let's have a look at our draft income and expenditure account. Okay, we can see that we included the entire donation amount of 7,500. This is incorrect. This should not have been the case. Alright, let's move to the next information. Other prepaid and accrued expenses at 31st December 2021 and 31st December 2020 are as follows. We are given it for administrative expenses. So let's figure out the correct amount for administrative expenses. We will first start with the draft amount given in our draft income and expenditure account. So we are given administrative expenses to be 30,100. Again, we apply the same rule for prepayments and arrears. Let's have a look below. We can see we are given the accruals, which is the arrears, right? And at the closing date, it amounts to 9,000, which means that this amount should now be added. And if the closing amount is being added, the opening amount should be subtracted. So we just subtract this amount of 6,200. And this results in the correct amount for our administrative expenses to be 32,900. Now we repeat the same process for heating and lighting. We start with our draft amount. And we can see heating and lighting right here, which is given to be 13,200. Let's write it down. Then we start with our accruals. The closing balance should be added, but there is none. Now the opening balance should be subtracted. So let's subtract this 1,500. Then we move towards our prepayments and we have the closing balance. Remember that we added the closing balance for our accruals, which means that we should be subtracting the closing balance for prepayments. So that's minus 700. Now this gives the correct amount for heating and lighting to be 11,000. Alright, then lastly we are told that cash at bank at 31st December 2021 amounted to 6,400. Okay, let's have a final look at our draft income and expenditure account. So we already made adjustment for subscriptions. Then let's have a look at tuition fees. We already figured out that we should only be including the tuition fees for the 3 months, October, November, and December. So instead of including this total amount of 8,000, we should only be including this amount of 3,000. I'm just going to write that down. Instead of 8,000, this should be 3,000. Then we are given ticket income from performances and we are given expenses from performances as well. So instead of including incomes and expenditure in two different sections, we can just figure out the total profit and then include it in our income. And if there is loss, that should be included in our expenses section. So in this case, we can see that income is 14,200 and expenses 11,500, which means that there exists a profit from performances. And this will be the difference between income and expense, which in this case is 14,200 minus 11,500, which results in 2,700. Alright, then we did these two. We already figured out that office equipment is a capital expenditure which should no longer be included. So this amount should no longer exist. Then we figured out the correct amounts for administrative expenses as well as heating and lighting. Again, business extension is a capital expenditure, so this should no longer exist. And we have building maintenance. Since we were not given any sort of information regarding this maintenance, we include this amount of 4,600 as the correct amount. Alright, I think we processed all of our information. Now let's have a look at our first question. We need to state 2 reasons why a club needs to have a clear objective. So firstly, it is essential to have a clear objective in order to ensure that the club has appropriate plans and strategies. Let's write it down. Helps the club to ensure that it has appropriate plans and strategies. Secondly, having a clear objective provides clarity to potential members as to the purpose of the club, since they might not want to join the club if the objective of the club does not align with what they prefer. So let's write it down. Provides clarity to potential members as to the purpose of the club. This concludes the first part. We can now move to the second one. We need to explain how the tuition fees of 8,000 should be treated in the revised financial statements of MN Drama Club. We need to support our answer with reference to the relevant accounting concept. Okay, let's have a look above. We have already calculated the amounts. We should actually be including this amount of 3,000 as the expense in this year's income and expenditure account, and the remaining 5,000, which we have already received as a advance, should be shown under the current liability section of the statement of financial position, because this is a deferred income as well as it is also refundable, right? And all of this is done according to our accrual or matching concept. So let's write these statements clearly. This is an application of the accrual or matching concept then the 3 months tuition of 3,000 covering October to December 2021 is recognized in the income and expenditure account for the year ended December 31, 2021. Then the remaining 5,000 is shown under the current liability section of the statement of financial position at 31st December 2021, because this is deferred income and is refundable. Alright, this concludes the second part. We can now move towards the third one. We now need to prepare the revised income and expenditure account for the year ended 31st December 2021. So this will now be quite easy because we have already calculated all of the correct figures as well as the items to be included. So let's start with our income section. Let's have a look above. The items to be included is subscription, tuition fees, and our profit from performances. So let's write down the headings. We have subscriptions, tuition fees, and profit from performances. We have already calculated the correct amount for subscriptions. So let's copy that amount. That was 49,100. Then we already calculated that only 3,000 of tuition fees for the month of October, November and December should be included in our income and expenditure account. And we have calculated the profit from operations as well, which was 2,700. Let's write it down. Now the total for our incomes will just be the sum of these three amounts of 49,100, 3,000 and 2,700, which results in 54,800. Now we can move towards our overhead section. Let's have a look above. So the items to be included will be administrative expenses, heating and lighting, building maintenance, and then we also figured out depreciation charges for buildings as well as our office equipment. So those are the 5 items to be included in our expenditure section. Let's write down the headings. We start with administrative expenses. We then have heating and lighting. Building maintenance. Depreciation for building. And the depreciation for office equipment. Okay, let's write down the amounts now. We calculated our administrative expenses to be 32,900 and heating and lighting to be 11,000. Let's write it down. So that's 32,900 and 11,000. The building maintenance was the correct amount given in our draft income and expenditure account, which was of 4,600. Let's write it down. And we have already calculated the depreciation for building as well as our equipment. For building, it was 21,600 and for equipment, it was 8,200. Let's write it down. That's 21,600 and 8,200. Now we can just figure out the total of our expenditures by adding these 5 amounts. So that will be 32,900 plus 11,000 plus 4,600 plus 21,600 plus 8,200, which results in 78,300. Now we need to figure out whether there was a surplus or deficit. In this case, we can see that the expenditure amount is greater than our income amount, which means that this will result in a deficit. And that is just going to be the difference of these two amounts. So that's 78,300 minus 54,800, which results in 23,500. This concludes the third part of this question. We can now move towards the fourth one. We are given additional information. The chairman has received many requests from local parents for the tutorial classes because the fee charged by the club is 50% lower than other organizations. Previously, we were also told that these after-school tutorial classes are targeted to students from poor families, which obviously means that the fees charged would be lower than other organizations. Then we're told that he has a plan to admit 60 students in October 2022, whereas previously the maximum number of students allowed were 20. To increase the capacity, he estimates that an expenditure of 30,000 would be incurred in an extension of the club's building. We now need to advise the chairman whether or not he should carry out the plan by justifying our answer. So let's have a look at the marking. It's of 7 marks, which means that 3 points should be mentioned in favor of the plan, 3 points should be against the plan, and then we need to give our final decision. So let's start with the reasoning for this plan. Since we now plan to admit more students, this just means that we can earn more income in the form of students' fees. Let's write it down. The club can earn more income in the form of students' fees. Secondly, the club is providing this tuition at a lower rate, which just means that students from poor families can be able to afford the tuition fee. Let's write it down. Student from poor families can afford the tuition fee. Nextly, the image of the club can definitely be promoted because they will be providing a tuition at a lower rate to the students from poor families. The image of the club can be promoted. Now let's move towards the reasoning against this plan. So the very first reason could be that the objective of this club may not align with this plan. This just means that the plan may not meet the existing objective of the club. Let's write it down. The plan may not meet the existing objective of the club. And secondly, we have told that an expenditure of 30,000 would be incurred in an extension of the club's building, and maybe the club will have to raise extra funds for this expansion. Let's write it down. The club will have to raise extra funds for the expansion. And lastly, we have been told that these after school tuitions will be provided by volunteers. So in order to admit 60 students, we might need additional volunteers as well. And maybe the club will not be able to find enough qualified volunteers to carry out the work. Let's write it down. There may not be enough qualified volunteers to carry out the work. Alright, now based on these factors, we need to advise the chairman whether or not he should carry out the plan. Now, there is no right or wrong answer in these kind of questions, but since we will be earning more income in the form of student fees, and this will also create a brand image for our club, I would suggest the chairman to carry out this plan. So let's write down that decision clearly. The chairman should carry out the plan. Okay, this concludes the fourth part of this question as well as the entire question number 1 of 2022 May-June paper 3-2. If you found this video useful, make sure you like the video and leave a comment below, and make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so that you do not miss any of these videos in the future. Thank you.